bring the meeting, the Troy Planning Commission meeting for September 22nd, 2021 to order. Mrs. Knight, could you please do the roll call?
Mr. Westmeyer.
Here.
Mr. McGarry.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
Mr. Wolke.
Here.
Mr. Cappers. Mr. Titterington.
Here.
Mrs. Ehrlich. Here. We have a quorum.
Good. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the September 8th, 2021 meeting. Is there any additions, deletions, or revisions?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to the next item of business. Historic District application, 123 East Main Street, the Hatfield House, to install a black awning. Does staff have a report?
Yes, sir. So this is a request by applicant Miss Flannery on behalf of the property owner Hatfield Properties LLC for the installation of a black fabric awning at the property located at 121 through 123 East Main Street. Awnings are permitted with a minimum clearance of 9 feet above the sidewalk grade with a maximum projection of 5 feet from the building. The proposed awning meets these requirements. Staff recommends approval of the proposed awning based on the following. It will meet City of Troy general ordinance requirements. The proposed awning will not detract from the historic integrity of the building and streetscape, and the style of awning can be found in other areas in the historic district.
Are there any questions from the commission for staff?
Austin, if the business on the other side of the building wants to do an awning also, would that be permitted?
Yeah, they would have to come back through for,
Because it's one building, but it's two separate.
that's correct, that is all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion?
Larry second.
Larry second.
Okay. Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McGarry.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Wolke.
Yes.
Mr. Titterington.
Yes.
Mrs. Ehrlich.
Yes.
Mr. Westmeyer.
Yes.
Application is approved.
Next item is Historic District application for 1 North Market Street, Ruby Salon for exterior painting. Staff have a report ready?
Yes, sir. So this is a request by Miss Wright for exterior paint modifications at the property located at 1 North Market Street. The property is located in the B3 Central Business District. The applicant is proposing the following paint modifications: the primary building color of pure white, trim color of tricorn black, and then the accent color of custom pink. The applicant did mention that the proposed accent color of pink is the original hair dryer color inside of Ruby Salon. The rendering did show window signs. Those will not be present. There'll be no additional window signage. And the checkered portion is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a complete dark black instead of the black and white checkered at the bottom. Staff recommends approval of the proposed exterior paint modifications based on the following. The proposed modification does not hide any important features of the building as listed on the OHI form, and it will not detract from the historic district and streetscape.
Are there any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, say again, this pink is original to the hair dryer in
No,
the,
it's inside of Ruby, that's correct.
an actual hair dryer.
The actual original hair dryers were that custom pink color. So
Yeah, I get this part. I don't use that part, but I get it. Okay, I just
It
want
was
to make
pink.
sure
That is
I want
the
to make sure I heard that.
Yes, they used to be pink.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Roll, please.
Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Wolke.
Yes.
Mr. Titterington.
Yes.
Mrs. Ehrlich.
Yes,
Mr. Westmeyer.
Yes.
Mr. McGarry.
Yes.
Application is approved.
Next item is a historical district application for 113 North Market Street for the installation of an 8 square foot window sign for JG Roofing and Renovations. Staff report, please.
Yes, sir. So a request by the owner, Jonathan Gebby of JG Roofing and Renovations, for the installation of an 8 square feet window sign at the property located at 113 North Market Street. This commercial building is permitted to have a total of 60 square feet in signage with a maximum window sign allowance of 25% per window pane. The applicant is proposing to install an 8 square feet window sign. The window measures about 33 square feet. The sign will be constructed of blue and green vinyl. Staff recommends approval of the proposed sign based on the following. Proposed sign will meet the City of Troy sign code requirements, and the proposed sign will not detract from the historic integrity of the building and streetscape.
Are there any questions for the staff of the commission?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So this sign is already up there, and I guess they didn't realize they needed to come before us, and we're resolving that issue with the next schedule update to council, right?
That's correct, plus the
Okay.
fee would be doubled as he is required to obtain a sign permit.
Okay,
The sign
and
fee.
so what's out there now, though, is a little different than what's in front of us?
Yeah, so he was awaiting approval from planning commission before he cuts the bottom of the number off. So that's what's on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that is part of the,
As it sits right now, the number's on the bottom, but after approval of planning commission, then he would cut that bottom number off, so.
thank you.
I have
Mayor?
a question. Is this used to be a residence, is this now strictly a business?
It's,
Yep, that is correct. So now it is an office space on the first floor and residential units on the second story.
it's B2, B3.
Any other questions?
I'll move for approval.
I'll
Second motion, second. Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who did the second? Thank you. Mr. Wolke?
Yes.
Mr. Titterington?
Yes.
Mrs. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Westmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Next item is an historical district application for 121 West Franklin Street for the refacing of an existing ground sign for Glass House Realty. Staff report, please.
Yes, sir. So a request by applicant Glass House Realty Group on behalf of the property owner. It's for the reface of the existing ground sign at the property located at 121 West Franklin Street. The property is currently zoned OR1 Office Resident District. The applicant is proposing to reface the existing two-sided sign currently located at the southwest corner of the property. The material of the lettering on the sign will be vinyl. It will be in the colors blue, green, and black. Staff recommends approval of the proposed sign reface based on the following. The proposed sign will meet the City of Troy sign code requirements, and the proposed sign will not detract from the historic integrity of the building and streetscape.
Any questions for staff?
Move for approval.
Second.
Larry and Mayor. Roll call, please.
Mr. Titterington?
Yes.
Mrs. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Westmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Wolke?
Yes.
Application is approved.
The next item of business is a historical district application for demolition of 112 and 118 through 118 West Main Street. I believe there is some reports or some information.
Handouts that were
Handout.
provided prior.
So, Mr. Chair, I think we need a motion to remove it from the table first. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made to remove this item from the table.
Second.
Second by Larry. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Westmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Wolke?
Yes.
Mr. Titterington?
Yes.
Okay, items removed from the table.
I believe there's 3 items. For the audience or participants, this procedure is going to be first review with the staff, their staff recommendation reports. There'll be discussion at the Planning Commission. And following that, we will be open for public comment. We have 4 speakers who will speak. 2 for and 2 in opposition, proponents and opponents. Give the first speakers 5 minutes each, the second speakers 3 minutes each. Following those presentations, we'll take one-time comments by both those favoring and opposing the application from people in the audience. One item, we're going to be limiting that to 2 minutes. During the presentation, you'll be signaled. You have 30 seconds left. At the end of 30 seconds, we'll drop the gavel and we go on to the next speaker. We want to make sure we warn everybody or caution that we're not taking a poll to count the number of people that are in favor or people that are opposed to these actions today. So that if you have an item where you simply are going to repeat what has previously been said, we will probably cut you off unless you have something new for us to consider in our deliberations. We want to avoid redundant comments from the audience so we can proceed with the action necessary. Staff, could you please give us your report?
Yes, thank you. The applicant requests a certificate of appropriateness from the Troy Planning Commission regarding the demolition of 112 or 118 West Main Street. The owners provide an application, a narrative justifying the reasons for seeking demolition, and supporting documents. I thought what I'd do with my staff report is, instead of reading the entire 100 and some pages, I thought if I started that, it would be the first day of winter by the time we left this meeting. So I won't do that. Instead, I'm just going to go through the report and highlight the fine points, so please stop me anytime with any questions you have. This property has no OHI form, which is the Ohio Historic Index form for this building. Staff reached out to the state, Ohio History Connection, and they were also unable to provide an OHI form. The building is not listed on the National Register. There is a building marker placed at the top of the building, indicated that it's the Independent Order of Oddfellows, along with the second marker located just above the first level that dates the building back to 1902, at least the front addition. There is a placard that was placed up by the Troy Historical Society in 1969 that reads Courthouses and Jail Law, Jail built here in 1808. It talks about a second floor over both, served as Troy's second courthouse from 1811 through 1824, and Troy's fourth courthouse, which served 1841 until 1888. Apart from these building markers, there's little to no documentation from the evaluation reports of the structural engineer and contractor indicating the multiple renovations over the years within the buildings. The discussion, I want to go through kind of the timeline of what has occurred with this property since it was purchased in 2018. This property was purchased in 2018 by 116 West Main Street LLC, which is owned by Randy Kimmel, who is in the audience here today. He owned the property since 2018. In January of 2020, a tornado hit the building, did extensive damage to the building. The owner concluded after a series of inspections and evaluations from the Miami County Chief Building Official, the CBO, the building contractor, and a structural engineer, who I believe Mark Simmer from Tritech is here as well, that renovation was not possible both economically to resolve the unsafe conditions. In September of 2020, the property owner submitted a demolition application for the property that came before the Planning Commission on October 14th, 2020. At that time, staff gave a report discussing the standards for demolition and removal of the Troy zoning code. Staff found that 2 of the 4 criteria were met for Planning Commission to consider the demolition. Planning Commission tabled the request at that meeting to allow interested parties to contact the Planning Commission before hearing and making a decision. On October 28th, 2020, city staff indicated the property owner's structural engineer would do a more in-depth analysis, and the city would engage a second firm, which we did, the firm of Wolpert, to provide a peer review to that structural analysis. That took place and was reported back to the Planning Commission on December 23rd of 2020. At that time, Planning Commission received reports from Tritech and the peer review from Wolpert regarding the building. January 19th of this year, the chief building official edited the original adjudication order to show that some of the repairs are needed, but it is not in imminent danger of collapse. Then in February 23rd, 2021, Planning Commission held this again at the meeting. It was stated that the Troy Development Council secured a purchase agreement on the property, and it was tabled at the request of the owner. During this process, the city of Troy provided financial options to Troy Development Council to pursue this property, to reuse the building. TDC factored in exterior facade repairs, first floor interior renovations for tenant occupancy, and securing finances to make that purchase go through. Ultimately, it was determined that they were unable to obtain the financial commitments required to meet the basic cost estimates for the improvements, making the option to purchase and repair costs infeasible. The cost estimates for the first floor occupancy levels renovations were approximately $2 million above the stabilization cost. That purchase contract was walked away from. This item appeared before the Planning Commission again on March 24th, 2021, after the applicant withdrew the purchase contract. It came before Planning Commission. At that point, the applicant asked for the item to be removed from the Planning Commission, the demolition application. This was because a second contract was entered into. This purchase contract was extended through June of 2021. This allowed for the purchaser to complete independent inspections and evaluations of the structure. Once again, the city provided financial options to help offset the cost of the exterior facade repairs and interior renovations. However, the purchaser revoked the purchase agreement due to the large repair, renovation cost, and purchase price, which were priced at $4.1 million. On July 9th of 2021, the Miami County Department of Development edited the adjudication order to state that the building was unsafe conditions related to public safety and must be resolved within 45 days. Following that, on July 13th, 2021, the City of Troy Development Department issued orders to repair the structure, which provided for 30 days compliance or for an action plan to be submitted for review. On August 13th of 2021, the city received and approved an extension request from the property owner, which was valid through September 1st of this year. And on September 1st of this year, the property owner submitted a demolition application, which is in front of you today. The standards for demolition in the zoning code requires that 2 or more of the following conditions need to exist. I won't read the 4 to you. I think we're pretty familiar with that as we've heard this case several different times. But the 2 items that the city felt this item did meet was the first item, which is the structure has incurred extensive damage to its basic structural elements, such as roof walls and foundations, presenting an immediate danger to the public safety as declared by the CBO. As stated before, the CBO issued adjudication orders on September 28th. Those were edited on January 19th and again on July 9th, all 3 stating that unsafe conditions exist at the building. Staff did contact Mr. England, who is the CBO, who stated that the aftermath of the tornado compromised the structural supports of the building. Being an old-style building, the masonry walls are structural, which shifted from the storm, pulling floor joists out of their pockets. Additionally, he observed rot that has set into the joists over the decades of leaks coming into the building. Mr. England stated that the Miami County Building Department oversees 5 counties. In the last 5 years, he has only placed placards on 4 of them as unsafe, with this being one of them. Staff concludes that the standard has been met as the property has been deemed unsafe by the CBO. The third item, which is the square footage cost of meeting the minimum building code, would exceed the square footage cost of the market value of similar structures in the historic district. You have information in your packet, a breakdown from Bruns General Contracting with repair cost. The information provided in that shows a cost of $659,788 to meet the building code standards to be considered safe. Coupled with the acquisition cost of the building, the price per square foot is $67.34 a square foot. We compared this to what we thought was the most comparable building across the street, the Masonic Temple, in terms of size. The Masonic Temple building is in fair condition when it was purchased, and that was purchased for $670,000. The square foot value of that building comes to $23.81 a square foot. The applicants do argue that the minimal repair costs far exceed the square feet market value of similar structures. They estimate the substantial additional costs on top of the $659 number. As repairs, once they're initiated, there may be other items that they are unaware of. Usually with older buildings, once you start a project, you may find some other items that need to be addressed. In addition to that, in order to generate enough rent to make the pro forma work, they would have to double the market rate in order to achieve profitability and positive cash flow. And in participating in both the purchases contract discussion, as stated, the city was willing to financially help these contracts to go through, financially provide options to them. We feel it does, the repair cost far exceeds the value of the property. And after their own independent evaluations from both purchasers, both contracts were revoked due to the independent estimates being greater than they could achieve through the building itself. So staff does conclude that that standard has been met. Those 2 standards do qualify the property to be considered for demolition by the Planning Commission. Another item in the zoning code talks about substantial economic hardship, and the applicant believes they meet this criteria due to the square footage cost of meeting the minimum building code requirements, which is required by the OBC Section 109, which states that it exceeds the market value of the property beyond the initial storm damage of repair cost. The needed improvements to lease the space would require rents above the market value for downtown Troy. Along with the demolition application, there is a plan for a reuse plan that needs to be submitted. In this case, the reuse plan is going to be a lot suitable for development and marketed as a premium downtown development lot. It would be done by properly compacting the site to fill with seed and straw. The applicant states that special caution will be taken during the demolition process to sections of the building that adjoin neighboring structures, and demolition will be performed by hand in some cases with small-scale equipment. It is noted that extensive structural investigation has been completed in order to understand the scope of the work necessary to prevent damage to the neighboring structures. With that, this application has been reviewed for compliance with all the requirements of the zoning code, except for the design standards and the requirements of the certificate of appropriateness from the Planning Commission. Staff does recommend approval of the existing structure as proposed, with the condition that a performance bond is posted with sufficient funds to ensure completion of the demolition and reuse plan. This finding is based on the following. The property meets the criteria listed in the Historic Preservation Overlay District of the zoning code. The property is not listed on the National Register. The building has been declared unsafe to the public by the chief building official. The applicant has demonstrated substantial economic hardship for the repair cost due to tornado storm damage, making the building economically obsolete, and a reuse plan has been submitted.
Jim, a question. In the reuse plan with demolition, does the action we take today result in demolition permit being issued, or is that a separate application and process that goes through
This would be you approving the demolition request. So staff then would continue the process with the demolition application. We're required to get some sign-offs from Vector and DP&L. They'll go through that process, but this gives us the authority to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the staff?
If the commission were to deny this request, what remedies would be available to the county CBO?
You're asking what options would be available? So the county, that would be up to Rob England. Right now, I think he has turned that in to his prosecutor for review. I don't want to speak to the county what actions they would take.
Any other questions? Staff? I appreciate your report that you sent us. Like you said, there's many pages, and you've got the information to substantiate your comments and recommendations. Okay. Without hearing any other questions for staff, we'll move to public comment. Again, we're limiting the first two speakers to 5 minutes. We ask that you approach the podium, give your full name and address and who you represent, and whether you're a proponent or opponent of the process. I believe the first speaker that's on our list is Kevin Quinlan.
No, go down to this
Oh,
one.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Derrick Muncie.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it is Kevin Quinlan.
Right here.
Down, next one down, okay. Derrick Muncie, I'm sorry, Derrick Muncie.
We had a last second change before the names were due.
That was my fault, sorry.
That's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Derrick Muncie, and I'm speaking on behalf of 116 West Main LLC and Randy Kimmel as a proponent of the demolition permit. Before I begin, I would like everyone to understand that Randy Kimmel and 116 West Main LLC originally purchased this property in question, 112 through 118 West Main, and I apologize if I only refer to it as the 112 throughout my speech to you. But they purchased this property because they believe in downtown Troy. They, like many others, recognize the importance of downtown Troy and the economic viability of downtown Troy. In fact, Randy and his family have purchased 4 additional properties in downtown Troy, and they've renovated them all and have secured tenants. This case, this is not a case of some faceless, disinterested, out-of-town investment company who is just trying to turn a quick buck, leave town to never be seen again. Regardless of what happens, Randy and his family will still be investing in downtown Troy because they believe in this mission, and their dedication, their purchase of not just 1 but 5 properties downtown demonstrates a continuing commitment to the development and prosperity of downtown Troy. It's also particularly important to recognize that over the last year and approximately 10 months, this project has been evaluated, examined, appraised, inspected by some of the area's most experienced and trustworthy contractors and engineers and real estate professionals, investors, and county administrators, or county staff. The evaluation of this project was not taken lightly. So I'd like to answer a few questions that were potentially left open at the last when this application was originally submitted about a year ago. Why is demolition needed, and why is it the best option for the city? There's no dispute that this structure is compromised. There might be a dispute about when that compromise occurred, but there is no dispute that this property is structurally not sound. There's no dispute that the January 2020 tornado caused a significant amount of damage to the 112 through 118 West building. In fact, you've already seen one inspection report from September of 2020 that explains the failures of the roof trusses over the original portion of the building, what would be the 1840 portion of the courthouse. And those, either the truss members were broken or they were, the truss connections have failed. Portions of the roof structure over the new addition on the front, the 1902 portion, have separated and lifted off their supports. The roof diaphragm connections to the shear walls have also been damaged. To any engineers in the room, that might mean something, but to me, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But what it actually means is that after the January 2020 tornado, the building lacks certain structural integrity, not only to support itself, but also to withstand further damage from the natural elements. It does not mean, as you've already heard, that it's just going to immediately collapse, but it does severely compromise the structure. And as the county has already designated, it is unsafe and not fit for occupancy at this point in time. You may not have seen yet, but you have in the packet in front of you a October 2020 evaluation from Tritech, the same company who did the original inspection. That first one was partial. It was a field inspection, but they couldn't determine the full extent of the damage without doing a little demo already on the inside to see just how bad the tornado had compromised the structure. And again, we have broken and rotting roof sheeting, roof joist, truss member separation, failed fasteners, parapet wall failure, and the walls have clearly shifted. That inspection report was reviewed by the inspector that was hired by the city, Wolpert, and they agreed with most of the damages and agreed that with the repairs recommended. Wolpert might not have agreed that it was all caused by the tornado, but at the very least, Tritech concluded that portions of the south and east walls were leaning as a result of the tornado. As you've already heard, repair is just not economically feasible. In fact, multiple people have submitted bids on the property, and we know that those are the exact people who we would look to renovate this type of structure. With the grant money, tax incentives, donor money, they still were not able to afford the cost to renovate this structure. And I know my time is running out quickly. Is that it? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Muncie. Is there any questions for Mr. Muncie from the commission?
Yeah. As I understand it, the acquisition cost is set at $485,000.
That is the market price that's listed at right now. It's actually under contract at the moment for a potential reuse that would satisfy some of the needs in the Planning Commission's comprehensive plan and the reuse and the rebuilding from the ground up, Class A investment in the community as a boutique hotel, which is asked for and desired by the planning, the central plan, or sorry, the comprehensive plan, and that would be a part of this new deal. Now, I'm not entirely sure what they would acquire the property at, but $485,000 is what it is listed at with the broker.
How was that arrived at?
Based on the purchase price and market value. I mean, I am an attorney. I'm not a real estate professional. And we have the real estate professionals in the building who determined the fair market price for the building. And, I would love to consult with them and make that determination, or if you would like to hear from him, that would probably be the much better person to talk about it.
Okay, I guess I'm curious as to how nearly $500,000 is established for a building which you say needs to be torn down.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's still the original investment was still over $400,000, and then there's still over another $40,000 invested into the property before the tornado. So that I think that has to do with the market price and also just market conditions right now.
So the owner feels that he is entitled to recover whatever he spent.
That's just what it was listed at. I'm not entirely sure how much the property will be sold as a part of the new contract, but that is certainly factored in. And again, the real estate broker listing the property is here, and he would be much better suited to talk about that issue.
Okay, at some point, I would like to hear how that number was arrived at.
Absolutely. Is that it?
Mr. Muncie, just one quick question. You mentioned the boutique hotel and the city's comprehensive plan. Is that something you're you're saying you propose is a remedy or, for the property or a reuse plan?
That would be a reuse plan. A year ago, after the original application, there was a lot to say about not wanting a parking lot or a missing tooth, so to say, and that particular store frontage. Well, it is under contract, and we would like that contract to succeed, but that would be conditioned on a demolition. No one's going to come in and build that boutique hotel right now. It would be conditioned on the demolition.
So the reuse plan that's submitted right now is a demolition and reseeding, compacting the fill, preparing the site for a building, and reseeding. So what you're talking about really isn't the reuse plan that would accompany it.
We would have to come back and submit a new application for that reuse plan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, any alteration to the site other than what is given approval will have to come back before the planning commission review.
So this is just for the demolition permit, which would be a condition of the new contract for the reuse plan as a boutique hotel.
Okay. Is there any particular assurances we would have that
So
boutique hotel would be?
obviously the bond for the demolition has to be there. That is a standard condition on any demolition. Getting a builder or a developer to bond the development plan while the building still stands is just not possible. Now, once the building comes down and we get through the permitting phase, that would definitely be something that the buyer would be interested in order to ensure that the reuse plan is approved.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions?
I guess I don't understand why it must be removed before the potential buyer is willing to commit to the construction.
Given the market conditions in the area, a new building will provide a square footage lease that provides a return on investment that an old building that's renovated that will cost, our last estimate is $3.2 million from a contractor to do a reno. So building new will allow the new property owner to actually see some kind of return on investment that is just not economically feasible with a reno and an anchor tenant right now.
Well, I understand that you can't build a new building before you remove the old building.
Oh.
Couldn't that be part of a package that, okay, we'll take it down and replace it with this?
Well, we have to get approval for the reuse plan after the demolition. It's just not, it's the next step after demolition would be submitting applications for the reuse, gaining the permits. It would be nice to do it all as one giant project, but it's just not how it works. And if staff could provide any clarification on that particular subject, but it's my understanding that the demo permit has to be approved, that will be a separate project, bonded, and then the new contract would take effect. And that would be, then we'd have to have permits for that build. It would have to comply with zoning code. And then at that point in time, the purchaser might be interested in bonding that reuse plan.
So you're saying might be interested in buying?
Well, it's not something that generally occurs, to have an investor bond a plan that at this point in time, the building's still standing, or even after the fact. It's not generally something that occurs. But given how interested they are in the property, there have been discussions about bonding the reuse plan.
I think there might be some issues with timing as well, which leads into what I think he's speaking about. One would be that the property is currently under orders not only by the city of Troy, but by Miami County. So right now, it's in the review process of Mr. Kendall's office, the prosecutor's office, to see what the county does going forward. So I think for them to say, hey, let's withdraw this application, or let's table the application and give us time to work out this deal, that deal could be 3, 4, 5 months. These deals go on. It's probably not fair to ask Miami County to do that, nor do we know if Miami County would do that. In the meantime, Mr. Kimmel has a building that's sitting there that has been deemed unsafe to the public, and now we're extending that even longer. So I think what they're asking for is to come in, make the demolition application, and then come back to the planning commission for approval as that process goes on, so we can get further involved in this, and then approvals can get provided and at least heard by the planning commission.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, kind of on your point, but that's not unusual given past certificates that we've approved over the last 10 or so years, is it? Where an applicant has come in and the reuse plan has been green space, and then ultimately perhaps later then another reuse plan comes forward back to the planning commission and we then approve it at a separate time. Is that correct?
That is correct. We went back and researched from 2010 the demolition applications that were provided to planning commission. 11 applications have been approved for demolition since 2010. Of those, all of those had property to be graded and seeded with applications coming back. Only one of them had an application immediately on the planning commission agenda for a reuse plan after that. We have 20 North Cherry Street, 25 North Mulberry Street, 316 West Water Street, just a list of those. And if you look at the dates when they were approved for demolition, it was about a year or a year and a half after was the reuse plan submitted. One of the more recent ones would be the Lynn's building that was at 210 South Market Street. It was approved for demolition June 11, 2014. In 2017, the Lynn's building came back for construction for building on that lot. We also have other ones, 25 North Oxford Street. I think Hayner came in and purchased that property, or Friends of Troy purchased the property. They asked for demolition May 10th of 2017. In the summer of 2018, they came back with a reuse plan. So that's pretty consistent with what we've seen at the Planning Commission. Even the city did it with the new fire station. We asked for demolition on April 22nd of 2020, and then it wasn't until December 9th of that same year, about 7 or 8 months later, that we came back with an actual application for a reuse plan, and all of those were approved by the Planning Commission.
Didn't we just do the, can't remember what the address was, mid-block demo,
126
South Cherry?
South Cherry Street, okay. Yeah, that was approved for demolition on May 13th of 2020, and it wasn't until March of this year that they came back for their reuse plan. It was seed and straw until their reuse plan came back. So what they're asking for is pretty consistent with what we've seen in the Planning Commission for at least the last 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One other question, Tim, or comment that you may or may not be able to answer this. I don't think Rob England is in the audience, but if we were to deny or take no action on this item, do you know if that leaves the county building official, or whether he plans on ordering a demolition or repair of the building? And at that point, if he does have to demolish it, or even if he has to renovate anything, we have no bearing, or we have no authority then at that point for reuse plans?
That would be up to them. I did ask for an update from their order, and he just stated that it was at the prosecutor's office and they would have to discuss it with the prosecutor. That's the answer I received.
But if they did, whatever action they took, it would take the city out of control for any kind of reuse at all, right?
My guess would be that the county would trump our requirements, but I would have to refer to our law director to get further clarification on that.
Right, just stated downtown zoning and building regulations, correct. Mr. Muncie, thank you very much, appreciate it. Next is, to speak is Chris Manning, speaking in opposition. Again, you've got 30 seconds, or, excuse me. 5 minutes.
Wait a minute.
Before you when you have 30 seconds left, I'm sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Manning, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance. a grassroots network of 40 local residents who advocate for the preservation, restoration, and repurposing of Troy's historic places. I also serve as executive director of the Openfield Tavr Museum. I oppose the demolition permit. The case that the applicant tries to make for demolition of 112-118 West Main Street falls far short of meeting the criteria that you must consider when you vote. I will speak about just one of the 4 standards for demolition, plus the reuse plan. Other Alliance members will address the rest of the standards during the remainder of the public comment period. The first standard for demolition says the structure has incurred extensive damage to its basic structural elements, such as the roof, walls, and foundation, requiring substantial reconstruction, and not or, but and presenting an immediate danger to the public safety as declared by the chief building official. Both parts of the condition must be met, and we have irrefutable proof that they have not. The building in question was hit by a weak tornado in January 2020. As the city's Woolpert report found, see Exhibit E, tornado damage was limited to the north parapet wall. In addition, both the applicant and a city official acknowledge in Exhibit F that the applicant received $180,000 in insurance due to the tornado damage. The applicant could have resolved any public safety issue last year with this money, as did all other downtown property owners with tornado damage, but the applicant did not. Please refer to Exhibit G, which includes 2 adjudication orders. The first dates to September 28, 2020. It states, unsafe conditions must be resolved within 60 days of receipt of this letter, or the building shall be razed. Later, after the Miami County Chief Building Official reviewed additional reports on the state of the structure, including the city-funded Woolpert report, he removed the language about raising the building. The most recent order, dated July 9th, reads, unsafe conditions related to public safety must be resolved within 45 days. Unsafe conditions related to occupants inside structure must be resolved before occupancy. As you can see, the chief building official has not declared the building to be an immediate danger to the public safety, which is required for this condition to be met. We contacted the chief building official this past Monday, September 20th, and received verbal confirmation that he did not declare the building to be an immediate danger to the public safety on the adjudication order. He told us, I could have put immediate danger. I softened it up to unsafe conditions because Randy needs to get those bricks fixed up. Planning Commission members, if the chief building official has not declared the building an immediate danger to the public safety, and he has not, the applicant has failed to satisfy the first condition for demolition. Now for the reuse plan. The applicant has proposed a grass lot which city staff argued in February would leave an obvious gap in the streetscape. The staff report in Exhibit J goes on to say that Planning Commission should require a rescue plan with new construction that would meet the architectural design standards as a condition to demolition. In the application, Exhibit K2, the applicant argues, given the economic hardship with restoring the property from its existing storm damage, there is no other alternative to demolition. According to the city's standards for demolition, Exhibit L, which is a separate packet from the others, if an applicant argues substantial economic hardship, the applicant must forward documentation to the Planning Commission that addresses the following criteria. 1, denial of a certificate would result in substantial reduction in the economic value of the property. No such documentation is provided in the application. 2, the square foot cost of meeting the minimum building code would exceed the square foot market value of similarly used and approved structures in the historic district as verified by a certified architect or engineer. There is no such verification by a certified architect or engineer in the Planning Commission packet, only some rough calculations by city staff and a comparison made to only one other building. Number 3, no reasonable alternative exists consistent with the architectural standards and guidelines for the property. In fact, a reasonable alternative does exist. Please see Exhibit M, which is the Troy Miami County Public Library's public meeting minutes from September 15, 2021. At this meeting, the library expressed interest in potentially purchasing and locating some of its services in the building in question. Planning Commission members, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that he has a substantial economic hardship, and the reuse plan that he has submitted should be rejected. This building is very historic and is worthy of preservation. We are asking you to be on the right side of history when you take your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is there any questions for
You said something about the library wanting to make use of the building?
Correct.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, the Troy-Miami County Public Library is interested in acquiring the building for a variety of services. I believe there is somebody here from the library who will be speaking on that point later in the public comment section.
Mr. Chair, on that point, Mr. Davis, did we not receive an email regarding that?
We did. We received an email, I think, I'm assuming you're talking about Rochelle Valley, who was in the, I think I saw her in the audience, yep, she's back there, stating that at this point in time, they were not going to pursue that property, as it was told to them it was under contract, is the email we received.
I'd like to speak about that at some point.
We can share a copy of the email.
Yeah, we can share the email.
Separate questions, if I may. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
On the topic of Mr. England's declaration, you've had numerous conversations with him about this property, and his indication to you regarding, I guess, the fact that we've had fencing up there and the reasons that we've had to have fencing up there, what was his statement to you about that?
Well, the reason the fencing is still required, we asked if we would remove that, he said because it does present an immediate danger to the public safety, and the fencing is there to prevent the public from getting too close into harm's way. So I would disagree with that statement that it is not an immediate danger, otherwise it wouldn't be fenced up and required to be so by the chief building official.
If I could speak to that point? The immediate danger, if there is such a thing, is caused by the fact that the north parapet wall has not been fixed. So it's not a matter of the entire building falling down. It's a matter of the fact that the $180,000 in insurance money was not used to fix the building from the tornado damage. If that had been done, the building would not be roped off or fenced off as it currently is, and we would have access to that sidewalk. Any other questions?
Any other questions for the speaker? Thank you very much. And the next speaker for the proponents to the application is Derrick Muncie. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. To speak on the insurance subject for a minute about how all the other property owners in town repaired the damage from the building. That's right, and so did Randy Kimmel. His other 4 properties, out of the 5 properties, 3 were hit, and the other 2 were properly fixed up. In this case, it just was not economically feasible to fix the property with the coverage, with the extent of the damage. You know, it is a business decision, an investment decision on what to do with the insurance money, but in this particular case, insurance coverage is limited because it was vacant or less than 50% occupancy at that time. So the $660,000 original quote to repair the building to a functional use, that $180,000 doesn't even begin to make a dent. The damage is far greater than just the parapet wall. As I stated, the Tritech report definitively states that walls have shifted because of the tornado. We know that trusses in the roof structure are broken. We know that the decking membrane was removed during the tornado, and that the damage far exceeds $180,000 of damage. And like I said, Randy Kimmel and his companies repaired all of the damage on their other buildings because the damage was not as extensive, and they had more coverage because those buildings were occupied. And again, might not be the best to speak on that subject, but you can potentially fully insure a vacant building, but it is not economically feasible again. So when we talk about an immediate danger, it's already been stated that the fence is up because there is an immediate danger to the community. Again, as I stated at the beginning of my comments, this project has been evaluated by some of the most trusted and respected community members and businesses, including Bruns, who's been in business for 70 years here in Troy. So, I guess whose opinion matters, the experts on the matter or community members who might not have the full details of the damage caused by the tornadoes. And last but not least, I would just like to remind you that this is economic hardship because the market value has been provided to you in our report by staff is would require 3 times the lease per square footage rate that the comparable building across the street, the Masonic Temple, would require to have a decent return on investment.
Thank you, Mr. Muncie.
Any questions?
Further questions for Mr. Muncie? Thank you. The next speaker for opponents to the application, Jeremy Toombs.
Thank you.
Allowing 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jeremy Tum. Thank you for having me here today. I'm at 124 West Main. That is the building that is directly adjacent to the building that you're considering an application for demolition. Did everybody here get my email from today? Did everybody have the opportunity to read the email that I sent? I'll try not to repeat too much of what I sent in that, but I want to make a couple things clear from what I've heard on the record today, and I want to make sure that my email is a part of this record because if this commission approves the demolition permit, they're approving the partial, if not complete, demolition of my building and of Key 2 Security owned by Ms. Cheadle. What's clear in the very report that was submitted by the applicant's own engineer is that he doesn't know what he's demolishing. He hasn't given you a specific plan. He hasn't told you how it's going to be done. It's been very vague, and he's even admitted, his engineer has admitted that the applicant, that the connection is unknown between the buildings, the building that I'm in and the building that Key 2 Security is in. He said that it needs further investigation. He says that other walls that they're proposing to demolish are not independent, which means they're part of my wall and they're part of Key 2 Security's. We don't have an answer to that, and Tritech covered their rear end on that. They made it really clear that they don't know what's being demolished. I'm not applying for any demolition on behalf of my clients. I'm not aware of Key 2 Security applying for that. So I don't believe this board, this commission, I don't believe the staff had the authority to submit it to you to say that it should be approved. And I don't believe that you have the authority to approve it as it's submitted because it's talking about demolishing my building. Now I wanted to go, since you had the chance to look at my letter, I want to jump to a couple of the other key points that were discussed today. There's been a lot of talk about imminent harm. Well, if there's imminent harm, Tim Davis, where were you protecting my building? Protecting me if I was underneath a building that was unsafe. You didn't believe that. You're saying that now to help them get their permit. If you believe that, you would have protected me and you would have protected Ms. Cheadle. So there's no imminent harm. That is smoke and mirrors. If there was imminent harm, then I'd have been asked to leave my building and it would have been fenced off too. That's all just a stunt. And I'm offended personally because one or the other is true. Either I've been in imminent harm and he's known it and he's allowed it to happen, or he's lying here today, or they're presenting information to you that is false and misleading. One of those two things are true. I'm also concerned about these numbers that they keep talking about. They bought a building that was already was in great decay. They bought a building that the previous owner had paid $125,000 for and did nothing to improve. They're conflating numbers to renovate an old building with numbers to repair a building, which is completely different. They accepted $180,000. They accepted that from the insurance company. If they thought they were entitled to more and the tornado did more damage, that's on them. That's not on the rest of us residents on this commission. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for?
I do to staff. Mr. Toom had come up with a number of legal assertions. Has the law director had a chance to review those?
Don't know if the law director has had a chance to review those. I haven't even seen the email he's referring to. If he sent one today, I don't know if I was included or it just went to planning commission. So I couldn't speak on that. I will state that imminent harm is kind of beyond my scope of expertise. The orders that they're talking about, I think
Imminent
you're
danger.
referring to is imminent dangers from
Correct.
the Miami County building official, not from the City of Troy Development Director. I just wanted to point that out.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just to clarify, this application, when I read it, does not say anything about the requesting demolition of the adjacent buildings, just 112 for
It's strictly on the property of 112 to 118. I think all planning commission and staff is asking for is authorization to demolish the structure that is currently there, nothing on any other adjoining properties.
That's false.
And so
The permit does not say that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
so all right, so the application is only for the demolition of this building, and so any issues between common or non-common walls are really between the property owners?
It's a civil issue, yes.
Okay. And we did get confirmation of that from Mr. Kerr.
And I believe Mr. Kerr has spoken with you.
No.
Or you reached out, I believe.
I've reached out to him 4 times in the past 2 weeks. He's not returned a single call or email. Which tells me he has concerns too, because if he wanted to address them, he could have addressed them. I clearly spelled out the legal concerns that I have regarding the personal liability of some of the people involved in this decision-making, and he's never once responded to that.
If I may provide some clarity on how the demolition will actually take place, if that's all right with the commission.
I think there's a few, are there any other questions for Mr. Toomey before we go to the next?
Well, did you receive the email from Mr. Toom? It was addressed to you and Grant Kerber, and it basically says anyone giving approval to Randy Kimmel or his LLC to do so will be acting beyond their scope and any authority that they may have or could be granted under the law and will not be subject to the protection of statutory immunity. Have you received that?
What was the date of that email?
20th of September.
Okay, I have received that email. You alluded to another email today I have not seen or received. Those are statements that would be up to Grant Kerber to make justification on. Whether or not they're true or not, just because they're put in writing, doesn't mean they are. So I think we have to take a legal look at that.
That's why I'm asking.
But he has not advised you, based on reading of that he has any concerns, has he?
Correct. I think assumption to think he does have concerns is just an assumption.
Tim, to reiterate my earlier comment or question I had, the proceedings today are not to issue a demolition permit. That's a separate application that takes place, correct?
You would be authorizing staff to issue the demolition permit.
Right, because the actual permit application and the methodology they're taking and the insurance bonds and assurances for not only damages to neighboring buildings, but damages to anybody, including public property. That's all considered in the application for the demolition.
It is not.
The demolition application requests a performance bond to cover the reuse plan. If there were issues beyond that, would be civil issues, just like property lines. If we issue a shed permit and they put it in the wrong spot of our property line, that's not the city's responsibility. That's a civil issue. It's the same in this situation. Anything of that nature would be a civil issue. We are issuing and would get bondage for most likely what would happen is they would submit and complete the contract. We get a copy of that demolition contract. We would ask for a bond in that amount and most likely 10% above, which is pretty consistent with what we do with other items for any unknown or unseen items. Fairly consistent with subdivision review and escrow agreements that we do.
That's false too.
Is what we would require. So
It is particularly important for the commission to understand that no supporting walls of the adjacent properties will be removed during the demolition. In fact, if there are walls interior that are required to support the adjacent structures, they will not be completely raised. So, stated in layman's terms, there will be no damage to the adjacent properties, and anything above the 2 stories on the adjacent properties will be removed by hand. So that's why we mentioned that some of, if not a large significant portion of the demo will be done by hand to ensure that the adjacent properties will not be damaged, and then any supporting walls that are shared will also not be damaged. And we have confirmed how wide one wall is on the east, and we have not confirmed how wide the other wall is on the west, but we do know that there is a connection, and that wall will not be touched.
Their own engineer says they don't know where the walls are. Their own engineer. So he said he was a lawyer, not an engineer.
Yeah, and it's.
And their engineer that they hired said it's not.
Thank you, Mr. Toom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's also important to understand, we don't know what
Okay, at this time, we will open it to comments to those that are both favoring or opposing the application. Again, I remind you, are limited to 2 minutes. You'll be warned when there's 30 seconds remaining. And again, we're not taking a poll to see how many people are here to vote yes to the application or say no to the application. So if we do hear redundant statements, we're going to cut you off. So we're not here until tomorrow morning. And please approach the podium and give your full name and address.
My name's Martin Stewart, 1486 Cheshire Road in Troy, member of the Troy Historical Preservation Society, trustee of the Troy Historical Society. I am opposed to this, vehemently opposed to this. I will be addressing the second condition for demolition, which states that the structure is listed as non-qualifying or is not consistent with other structures in the historic district in terms of historical character, architectural style, construction material, height, setback, or mass. Let me start by quoting a portion of the standards for demolition. Demolition of a historic or contributing property or architectural feature constitutes an irreplaceable loss to the quality and character of a listed property or district, in this case, the city's downtown historic district. Staff should not put forth documentation, could not put forth documentation that this standard has been met, because it's obvious that a 120-year-old building is consistent with this block of century-old storefronts. I would call the Planning Commission's attention to Exhibit A, a letter from the State Historic Preservation Office that indicates that the property appears to qualify for nomination to the National Register of Historic Places as a contributing resource to an expanded Troy Public Square Historic District due to its significant long history and association with the governmental, fraternal, and commercial development of downtown Troy. I would also like to point out the properties that contribute to the significance of a National Register Historic District are afforded the same standing as those individually listed, including the ability to apply for tax incentives, tax grants, credits. Why wouldn't Troy want to preserve the option to expand the current Public Square Historic District, which is currently on the National Register of Historic Places? Planning Commission members, it is clear that the second condition that must be considered for demolition has not been met. Next, we'd like for Scott McMillan to speak about the third condition for demolition.
Time.
I'm Scott McMillan. I live at 2075 Swales Road, Troy. I'm representing THPA and my wife, because she's always right, and opposition of demolition. And I will address the third condition for demolition, which states that the square foot cost of meeting the minimum building code would exceed the square foot market value of similar approved structures in the historic district. The applicant's argument is flawed for the following two reasons. One, the applicant paid an amount for the building that nearly 4 times what was paid for the building 7 years earlier. See Exhibit H. A more reasonable price should be used for purposes of this calculation. 2, the applicant also does not include the $180,000 in insurance proceeds received from the building. This money should be taken into account to allow for a fair comparison. All told, the cost of meeting the minimum building code has been inflated by roughly $500,000, and the Planning Commission should require a more apples-to-apple comparison. Finally, we contacted Troy Community Works to find out the cost of the improvement to the Coleman Allen Settlement Building at 13 East Main Street. See our comparison on Exhibit I. It turns out that the cost per square foot to repair the CAS building was about $2.5 million, which amounts to $209 per square foot compared to this quote the applicant received to repair the 112-118 West Main Street building. Total cost square foot provided by the contractor was $199, about $10 less per square foot for the CSA. Next, I'd like to present Lottie Wellbaum to speak on behalf of the fourth condition.
My name is Lottie Wellbaum. I live at 2629 Caldwell Street, Piqua. Troy is my hometown. I was born and raised here. I will address the fourth and final condition for demolition, which states the structure is contributing and has been declared a public nuisance, and its removal will not adversely affect the architectural integrity of the streetscape. In the staff report, city staff erroneously claimed that the first part of the standard has been met. I would direct your attention to Exhibit B, an email from Miami County Public Health. The email confirms that the building at 112 to 118 West Main Street has not been declared a public nuisance, and also declares that only Miami County Public Health can declare a building a public nuisance. The city of Troy and Bruns does not have the jurisdiction. Therefore, this part of the standard is not met, contrary to what the city staff report states. In addition, when it comes to the building's removal, staff acknowledges that they are unable to support the second part of the standard. I would direct your attention to Exhibit C, which shows that the block currently looks like and what it would look like if it were demolished and replaced by a grassy lot. It is clear from looking at this chart and the email from Miami County Public Health that this standard also has not been met. Planning Commission members, we believe there is irrefutable proof that the applicant has not met at least 2 out of the 4 conditions, the minimum necessary to proceed with demolition of this building.
Hello, my name is Mark Stemmer, 286 Black Horse Court. I'm the engineer for Tritech that reviewed the building multiple times. I want to make some clarifications on the adjoining building structures. We were not afforded access to those structures. The buildings to the west shows parapets at some areas which define a separate wall for those buildings to the west. There is an area that doesn't show a parapet. But a common building practice is to build the wall or to build the roofing over the wall, and you don't see a parapet. We did state that we don't know what the structure is back there because we don't. Typically, a adjacent building would have its own wall, its own structure, and likely the existing walls at 112 through 118 are independent of that building structurally. There is a flashing detail to keep the water out from between the 2 buildings, but that is not a structural element. Similar conditions on the east side. We were not afforded access to those. That doesn't mean those structures are supported by the wall of 112. They could very well be spanning north-south on interior bearing walls and structurally be completely independent. There is flashing connection, but again, that's flashing. That's what I wanted to state.
Thanks, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Lorraine Wyatt, and I live at 118 South Walnut Street, just down here. I am a member of the THPA, and the other day I drove around the city and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I'm here to discuss, however, the 112-118 East Main building and its future. Would you please look at Exhibit H? In your packet, you'll see that Mr. Kimmel and his group own several buildings in Troy, specifically in our downtown area. You'll also see that there is a distinct pattern of paying premium prices for downtown property. If a person or business wishes to overspend for property, that shouldn't be a community's concern. However, it is a concern when that property is neglected, combined with the excessively overpriced sale, it leaves a very negative impact on our community. And this also goes against the spirit in which the standards for demolition was drafted. I understand that demolition of this building is on the agenda. Many of my neighbors and Troy citizens are understandably concerned about this dangerous precedent that is about to be set when the Planning Commission approves the demolition for this building. Yes, a yes vote means that you're essentially handing every property owner a playbook for potentially tearing down their own building and other buildings here. A no vote means that you're sending the right message to us. You're sending the right message to the community. Code enforcement should be the answer. The city should demonstrate its commitment to the Troy past and the future of preservation. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question if I'm allowed to ask. You stated 112 to 118 East Main Street. I'm assuming you're referring to 112, 118 West Main Street.
Yes, sorry. I was like, at the time, sorry. Is that it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathaniel Green. I reside at 22 West Ray Street here in Troy. Mr. McGarry, Mayor Oda, Planning Commission members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak representing the THPA in opposition to the proposed demolition. Exhibit M in your packet that you received has the meeting minutes from last week, September 15th at the library. The minutes show that there is a contract to purchase the land on which 112 to 118 West Main Street stands if demolition is approved. Our understanding is, and as was discussed earlier, that there are plans to build a boutique hotel on the site if this building is demolished. If that is the case, that proposal should be considered as part of this application. Why is this not being brought before the Planning Commission for consideration? This process needs to be far more transparent. It is not in the downtown community's best interest for the Planning Commission to approve demolition without exhausting all reasonable alternatives. In addition, if the Planning Commission approves a grass lot, the city will lose a lot of leverage in influencing how the property would be redeveloped. And there are no guarantees that it would be developed right away. Chances are we'll have a vacant lot there and an eyesore to on the main strip there coming into Troy. Everyone would like the sidewalk in front of this building to be reopened. This can happen promptly if the Planning Commission denies the application for demolition. The city and Miami County can then move forward with code enforcement against the property owner. While the brick facade is repaired, the applicant could explore a sale of the building, potentially to an organization like the library. Planning Commission members, I urge you to give due consideration to the extensive amount of documentation that has been provided you today. If you do, you will find that there is no reasonable path forward in the demolition of this property if the standards for demolition and removal are adhered to. Thank you for your time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you tell me which of these he says is the minutes from the meeting? Which exhibit?
I believe they're the exhibits that you distribute to us for the meeting.
Which one? Thank you. There's several M's.
Pages of them.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Green? Go ahead, sir.
Terry Perk, 1125 Westridge Drive, Troy. I'm a local historian. I've been here since 1992 as a resident. Before that, longtime family history. Let me cut to the chase. As you are aware, the rear portion of the building in discussion was built in 1841 and served as the Miami County Courthouse until the current courthouse was built in the 1880s. Very few structures in Troy survive that have a tangible link to the city and county's early African-American history. This building is one of them. Perhaps the building's most significant association with that history involves the state of Ohio's so-called black laws. These laws, the first in the nation, were designed to discourage free blacks from settling in the state and to regulate those already here. Upon entering the state, a person of color was required to post a $500 bond and provide evidence of their free status through the emancipation papers or the written testimony of white witnesses who would guarantee their good character. These records would have been kept in the Miami County Courthouse, the building in question. This gives it considerable historic significance. The old 1840s courtroom is still intact in the rear portion of the building. I encourage the Planning Commission to deny the application for demolition of this historic structure, which would erase one of the earliest sites associated with Miami County's African-American community. Thank you.
If I may, since I'm being discussed. My name is Rochelle Vi, and I'm the director at Troy Miami County Public Library. I live at 1129 Halifax Drive in Troy. On Tuesday, September 14th, the Tavr building was brought up in a discussion and eventually led to a meeting with Patrick Titterington and Tim Davis that same afternoon. While speaking with them, I began to think about the different types of services we could possibly offer there, including services we're not currently able to offer due to space constraints at our current location. And we currently now do have 2 locations, including the local history building at 100 West Main, so it wouldn't be a big departure for us. It's no secret we've been working for several years on a master plan process to address space needs. Current plans have us building a new 3-story library that is 39,000 square feet at the same location. It would require acquiring Bruckner Park from the city, which we've not been successful at so far. I began gathering information for my board meeting, which was last Wednesday, which you've heard about, and spoke to a number of people. During the latter part of that information gathering process, I heard from Ben Reddick that the building was under contract. It's not my library board's intent to interrupt the processes of city government or to stall the sale of this building. However, we have a very real space problem that seems like a potential win-win solution for the city, the library, and the community. If the library were to occupy this building, I envision it becoming a tech center to encompass meeting rooms with tech capabilities, a computer lab offering job searching and digital literacy classes, along with open lab time for the public, a makerspace with equipment and technology not available elsewhere to the public, and an entrepreneur center with computer and office spaces for startup businesses. I could also see us moving our local history library there and offering a story center, which is a digital space where people can record their personal histories for posterity. Doing all of this and fixing mechanical and technical and digital problems at our current location would be significantly cheaper than that 3-story building we've been looking at to date. If you table the demolition, I cannot tell you that the Board of Trustees will decide to buy this building. The board will be required to do its due diligence.
Time is up. Thank you. Thank you, Rochelle.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Does the library have such funds, should hypothetically they want to?
We have money.
To renovate,
We have money. The board has not specifically discussed how much. To be quite frank, Nancy, please be kind. This would be a community effort. There are a lot of community people that want to save this building. They would have to basically put up or shut up. They would have to be involved in fundraising. They would have to be involved in they would have to be involved in making this work. We do have a significant amount of money we've saved the board hasn't determined how much of our cash reserves they want to put towards the project. If we kept about a 6-month balance of reserves, we'd have about $3 million we could spend. So that was going to go towards our $15 million project, but that's way short of that. So, and you also have to keep in mind, we have significant issues at the building we currently occupy. We have about $1 million repair of our HVAC system, and we still need to do some remodeling there. So we would still need to raise some funds. So we are not a quick solution to this problem. But,
thank you.
yeah.
So why, I mean, I know there's a previous contract, why wouldn't you go ahead and put a contract behind the current one?
It's still taxpayer dollars, and this idea just materialized last week. We can't turn on a dime like that. So we're not, in order for us to do our due diligence, we'd need to go through the bill. I have talked to 2 architects. I've talked to, lots of people before I found out it was under contract. Because I was trying to get all of that information from my board before I knew. So, but we would have to do some work just to make sure that, basically what the third floor of that library we were looking at is what we would put into this building. And it's about this right space amount. Now, would that work? We'd have to do a space plan. You know,
What would be your timing?
I mean, I've had 5 days to look at this.
I know, I mean, just
Yeah.
an estimate.
I don't know. The board would talk about it at their next meeting, and we could probably have a better idea then, or we could do a special meeting and do it, but I really couldn't, you know, but the board was very, very specific that they don't want to be the reason, you know, that to stall this process. You know, we're not trying to stall city government or, you know, to stop a building sale or anything like that. We had conversations, and I called a bunch of people, and then I found out the building was under contract, but the cat was out of the bag at that point. So that's what happened. So I think it's an intriguing idea. I'm pretty excited about it, but it's obviously been for sale for quite a long period of time, and, you know, wish I thought about it a lot sooner. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess my question is, and maybe you already kind of hit on it, Rochelle. We were only notified of this idea last week, yet the initial demolition application was submitted over a year ago.
Right.
And there's been 2 purchase contracts since then. And do we have any idea how many interested people, maybe this is a question for Mr. Reddick, actually walked through the building to explore that building in the last over a year? So, and I know it's been numerous, I don't know an exact number, but it's a lot more than the 2 that actually put purchase contracts. And yet it was only last week that this discussion was started after orders had been formally filed by both the city and the county, correct? And after the deadline had passed for those orders to be filled, and after this demo permit was resubmitted to the planning commission. Is that, do I have the timetable correct?
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Was there a question in there for me?
Not.
Hi. My name is Judy Tome, and I live on McCurdy Road, Troy, Ohio. First of all, it is not the duty of the city staff to see to it that Mr. Kimmel makes a nice profit on this project, and that they're not to be involved in his attempts to sell it to other investors. It's not their role. In fact, I've gone through thousands of pages of documents related to this, and it has occurred to me that city staff has actually been very deceptive in this matter. For example, Greg Harris, who now has suddenly resigned from the city staff for reasons I don't know, but he was very strong in favor of this, and in fact he was counseling Mr. Kimmel, who owns the Shell Corporation that owns this building, this Shell Corporation with no other assets. And you can let your imagination run wild with that. But the bottom line is, Greg Harris and city staff decided not to tell this planning commission that there was $180,000 put forth to repair this building and to make it stable. And he also did not point out, nor did Mr. Davis nor Mr. Titterington point out to this commission that this building only had the parapet damaged and some roof damage. That damage amounted to $180,000. Everyone else repaired their buildings, but not Mr. Kimmel, because there's a bigger profit ahead. And my concern is, why is city council in this with him? Thank you.
indicates city council is in this with him. Could you explain that,
City
please?
staff, I'm sorry, I correct that.
Good afternoon. My name is Bradley Brown. I live at 105 Crestwood Drive, and I'm an interested citizen who is vehemently opposed to this demolition request for the simple reason that this is tantamount to demolition by neglect. Mr. Kimmel has been allowed to purchase this building, and he has been allowed to, in an EF0 tornado, I'm a weather spotter, I've been through the training, tops is 90 miles an hour in wind speed. It's not going to do the amount of damage that these reports are saying that it is. What these reports have done is lump the fact that this is a 180-year-old building you are dealing with in with cosmetic damage that was caused by a tornado. I want to take you back to 1948 for just a minute. The White House was in serious disrepair, more so than this building was. It was in danger of collapse. President Truman put forth a multi-million-dollar project that fixed the building. That building was built in 1800. It was 148 years old, and it's still standing today. So why can't this building be standing? Why are we allowing this demolition by neglect to occur? Is that a hill y'all are willing to die on? Because if you approve this demolition permit today, that's the hill y'all are going to die on. You're going to allow demolition by neglect to be made the new norm, and it should not be that way. Code enforcement should have been done, and it has not been done.
30 seconds, sir.
Please do not cut me off mid-sentence, sir, because I want to complete my thought real quick. The fact that we're even having a gagged hearing in this tells me that your minds are already made up.
No, it's just a matter of
It's a gagged hearing, Mr. McGarry. There's a lot, the passions are running very high on this, and I'm going to end it with this. Do not let this be the hill that you all die on. Thank you.
My name's Michael R. Fox. I live at 312 West Simpson, Troy, Ohio. I was born in this town in 1947, lived here my whole life. That building down there that you want to tear down, you don't have the fond memories of it that I do. Catherine McNeil ran the Flesh restaurant there in the 1950s and 60s. I used to walk from Edward School down there with my friend Jesse Olden and eat dinner at 12 o'clock on our break. They had the B.F. Goodrich store in there in the 60s. I used to go in there and get bicycles and toys. You don't have any memories of that because most of you haven't lived here your whole life. Many of you probably weren't born to the 70s and the 80s. But you're tearing down wonderful memories. This man, if he's got enough money to spend $400,000 or $500,000 to tear it down, he should have enough money to fix it. We need to get an attorney, if you guys process this, and subpoena him and take him to court and find out what he's done with his money, who's behind him wanting to tear this building down, and why is there such interest in turning it into a parking lot? It would be a wonderful antique mall. You could have a restaurant on the third floor. It's scenic. The structural integrity of the building is independent. The 1840 courthouse was built way before the 1902 front was put on it. The other buildings to the left of it is independent from that because I have pictures of it showing it independent, like 1912, 1914. Yeah, so what you need to do, the other thing is, nobody has access to that building to go inside and look at it for themselves. You're taking these people's word, what they say from engineers or structural engineers. Why don't you open that building up to the public and let them look at the inside of it and see what it's like? Why don't you put a big ad in the paper saying, is there investors that want to build or buy that building? I'm sure. And this guy needs to stop overpricing it and put it down to what he's paid for it and sell it off.
It's time, sir.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Andrea Keller. I'm the Executive Director of Troy Main Street at 405 Southwest Public Square. You all received an email, a letter from our board stating that we do not support the demolition of this building and that we always stand on the side of historic preservation. But I just wanted to add to that, in dealing with this situation over the last year, I guess, myself and THPA have both reached out to Heritage Ohio, which is one of our parent organizations. And I was speaking to them last week as we were preparing what we would send to you all. And one of the concerns that they really brought up was the reuse plan being a grass lot. They have another town that they've worked with who has a similar situation, and they have really struggled to get somebody to build new in that town because of it being in a historic district and because of the regulations that come with that. So I just thought that was good feedback. They said they've had 3 hotels almost build in that location, and then every time it's fallen through. So that was a concern that they brought up that I just thought was worth sharing.
Hi, Ben Reddick, Bruns Realty Group. I've heard a bunch of questions regarding the marketing and interest in the building, so I figured I'd answer some of those. As far as the pricing of the building, I think the owner consulted multiple brokers in the area. When he got that rolling, I think the consensus was around $30 a square foot to start, negotiable with a liquor permit included in the sale. That's where that roughly 480, 485 number comes from. Obviously, sales prices are negotiable. To answer the question about why isn't a hotel reuse part of the application, the current buyer still has about 5 months of due diligence left. So there's no way of really having a hard and fast commitment on putting the actual structure up. I mean, no buyer at this point is going to really have that as far as, redevelopment commitment. As far as interest in the property, I've probably shown it 36 times or so. Well, at least about that many unique interested buyers. That's anywhere from local developers. I've had people come in from Columbus, Indianapolis, state of Washington, and state of New York to look at the property. I've had in my marketing, my LoopNet stats tell me I've got over 23,000 hits on it since I started marketing it, and about 6,000 unique visitors and 1,300 unique downloads of the data. So, just to give you some input.
Any questions for Mr. Reddick?
Yes, I have a question. Has anybody approached you from a historical society here in Troy to try to purchase the property?
Not to try to purchase it, no. No, I have had a couple of people from that work with historical groups almost on a nationwide basis that have come and looked at it, and one group came and they said it's just too big of a project. They're not interested in taking it on.
Thank you.
Has anybody established the value of the property after it's vacant?
After what the lot value would be?
Lot value as a vacant property.
Well, yeah, I mean, the value of the land when it comes down would actually be about equivalent of the asking price plus demolition. I mean, you're looking at about a $500,000 or $600,000 lot. It's a 1/3 acre lot, roughly, adjacent to a public parking lot that you can develop 100% of the lot on. There's no setback requirements.
Any other questions from Mr. Reddick?
Do you know how many offers or contracts have been put out there that have been canceled? I mean, I know there's a couple. Is there any more?
So, no, none above what has been talked about today, no.
Okay.
There have been parties that have expressed interest in bringing an offer forward and decided to pass.
Okay.
So what their offers, the amounts of what their offers were going to be, I don't know. It was never brought to me.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Reddick.
Hello, my name is Christy Schell, and I live at 1205 East. I got two addresses, one in town, one out of town. 1205 Hillcrest Drive, Troy, Ohio. And I'm actually going to take a different stance in this conversation. I am the current president of the board for Troy Community Works, and we truly appreciate that the city of Troy has supported our renovation project. And there are additional projects that have happened in the city, both private and public. One is our other building at 121 East Main, which is, we affectionately call it the Eastgate Building, but it was the former Salvation Army. We also have the Stouter House. We have the Foundation Building that is currently, we have, private investors, of course, with the Masonic Temple and the U.S. Bank Building and those kind of things. And I want to commend the city for their support, but I also want to encourage them to continue that, okay? I feel like we have, I know that there's been a lot of work and feel like everyone feels like options have drained, but I would still encourage you to continue to find a way to make this happen. There have been private organizations like ourselves and public and private investors like Wade Westfall and different investors that have taken the responsibility of their building and made it into something. And Mr. Kimmel is not taking that role, and we would ask him as a community to take that role, and that is, we hope, your job to hold him to that level that other people in the community have committed to. So, thank you.
Are there any questions? Commissioner?
Tim Miller, 132 South Plum. I wasn't coming here today, but my wife invited me. She's with the library. I've never been in this room before, but it pales in comparison to the second floor of that building. I've been in every floor of that building, and you guys are talking about the history. And when you stand in that courtroom and you can see the paintings on the wall, it just really takes you back. You just kind of, it's really amazing. But as far as the building we're talking about there, and you guys letting that fence sit there as long as you did, okay, that's just completely embarrassing. I've had, I'm sure the lady that calls me all the time, I've changed my sidewalks, I've painted my house, I've cut my bushes, and I had 30 days. Mr. Businessman gets to embarrass the whole city. We had the 911 thing down there. It's embarrassing. Yeah.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Are there any comments from the commission?
I guess I do have one question for Judy Toom. You indicated that you were willing to purchase this for $125,000. What would you do with it if you were able to purchase it? Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm dreadfully hard hearing, but yes, it's miserable. Anyhow, I would be willing, if you'll give me the $180,000 insurance check, I will pay him $125,000 for the building, and I will stabilize it. And I will probably renovate it. As these members may or may not know, but I spent about $1 million renovating the law buildings that are located on the corner of West Main and Plum Street. So I invested very heavily and made a beautiful project, if any of you have ever been inside of it. So this is a building that must be saved, and I'm willing to step up, but I think Mr. Kimmel, either he made a really bad business decision, which no one has ever saved me from a bad business decision, but he's looking to this commission to save him. But the bottom line is it all comes down to code enforcement. But if I were to buy the building, I would bring it up to standard, and my intention would be to make it a highly functioning building like I did the law buildings. But he overpaid, if he paid $485, as the transfer documents show, but there are ways of manipulating those numbers. So whether he paid that or not, I don't know, but considering it was only $125,000 before, and then all of a sudden it shoots to $485 with new investment, it makes me question that. But the bottom line is, I'll save the building. I don't want it torn down. I think it would be a terrible pox upon this community.
May I ask? Did you make an offer to Mr. Kimmel or his?
No, I haven't talked to him, but I'm making the offer now. I mean,
I understand that.
yes.
But it's $125,000 for the building.
$125,000 is what the prior owner paid for the building. And Mr. Kimmel came along and gave him $485,000, though nothing had been done to the building, which, like I say, I find it questionable.
Excuse me, I just wanted to clarify your comment, though, as you said.
Yeah, 125,
Plus
and he
the
gives me
building.
the 180 that he received from the insurance company. I will stabilize it, and we're off to the races.
That's, okay.
I got a comment if I can make.
I'm trying to understand the math.
I have several comments I'd like to make to.
I can't hear you.
That's okay.
Yeah, can you pull the microphone closer, maybe?
This is about as loud as I can, I guess as close as I can. The city had the appraisal done on the property after the tornado damage. Just to give you a sense of why the prices are what they are, I think Ben talked about how the building is for sale with a liquor license. The appraisal that we received was on February 11th of 2020 in an as-is condition, and that appraised for $440,000.
So why does he want to tear it down?
So I think to have somebody come in to say, I'm willing to pay half the price of that
No.
and save the building, I mean, you're asking Randy to say, I'm willing to give it away just for nothing. And I don't think that's fair personally. If I own the property, I put myself in there.
If it's worth $440,000, why would you demolish it? It makes no sense. It's illogical, Tim. City staff has an interest in this that defies logic. I don't understand it.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Mr.
Chair.
Has nothing to do with our agenda.
I do have a question for staff, and that's regarding the concerns, questions about the property maintenance aspect. And full disclosure, I've been part of those discussions. We've talked to Grant, Mr. Kerber, we've talked to Rob England, the county building official, and were advised that we needed to keep that fence up. Back in September of 2020, after this was tabled and actually taken off the agenda, my recollection is that we did that knowing that there were property maintenance issues out there, but to try to encourage some solution or resolution that would save the building, redevelop the building, and as part of that, offered incentives of up to $1.1 million in loans and grants to try to enable that redevelopment to occur. My question, that's the statement, but my question, because yes, I do have a question, and that is, with regards to property maintenance, what is our limitation on what property maintenance orders can affect?
Correct. I think it was Tim Miller who talked about the fence sits there way too long and the city staff didn't do property maintenance. The only thing we have in our property maintenance code that we do as city staff is exterior, nothing with interior. That's Miami County. So to say that we haven't done anything or gone past that, we did allow, we didn't send orders on it because they were under contract several times. And so we wanted to play that out. And then on the other side, we came across with financial options for individuals who had that purchase contract to help save that building several times. And then I'm sitting here hearing that we're being criticized for not doing property maintenance enough and not acting on that. What you really can't have both. You either help save the building or then you crack down.
All
with
right,
our property maintenance orders.
So what you're saying is our property maintenance was limited to the exterior.
That's correct.
from our conversations with the county, what can they do on the inside to affect improvements to the point where it needs to be occupied?
I'm assuming their orders are similar to ours. There's minimum standards. They would go in and they could cite different items if they were in violation of those and request them to be up. In addition to our property maintenance orders, we don't have the authority to go in and make the repairs ourselves. We can only file into criminal court against them for a minor misdemeanors or whatever our penalty is right now.
So if we went forward with our orders and the county went forward with their orders, we would have, the building exterior would be cleaned up, the fence would be gone, but does that guarantee that anything would be inside the building other than it continue to be vacant?
Yeah, I don't want to pretend to know the interior building code requirements, so I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. England.
It's been almost 2 years. Why haven't you cleaned up the outside?
Ms. Toom, would, on the $125,000, I read your email earlier, would you do that as a donation to the library, if the library had a project?
I'm not aware. My hearing is so bad that I've heard almost nothing of what has been said here today.
I was reading your email.
Yes.
That you sent. and
Yes.
It sounded to me like I read it as a donation. Is that?
No, what I'll do is,
You wouldn't,
I'll buy it.
but you wouldn't put it toward the library purchase?
I don't know anything about the library.
Okay, just a question.
Apparently there's a conspiracy theory going on.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
We all get to speak twice?
4 times, actually.
No, Mr. Muncie, would you like to address a comment that was made?
Yes, directly. I would like to address the $125,000 figure that's been peddled by the last few speakers. That was for a sheriff's sale on the property. In 2002, the property sold for $224,000. You'll have a hard time convincing a realtor that the property depreciated by $100,000 in 10 years. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware where that $125,000 figure comes from.
Okay, thank you. Your input.
My name's Carol Kerber. I live at 326 South Plum, and I just can't keep my mouth shut any longer. Believe me, I have plenty I could be saying here, but I'll spare you that because we would be winter. But I've been thinking of an idea because I'm in Covington frequently, and I know Mr. Kimmel is from Covington. And some wonderful things have been happening in Covington, right? Got redevelopment. And I believe the Marius Technologies are probably one of the most favorite, wonderful people around right now. And right now, I suspect you're probably...
You direct your comments to the
All
board.
right. Right now, I suspect Mr. Kimmel is one of the least favorite people in Troy, Ohio. So, I would like to challenge him, because after searching his means, he's not exactly in poverty. Why not, I'm suggesting to you, sir, that you donate the building.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll donate the masonry repair. I've been laying brick in this town for 40 years. I know that building. I fixed the building, the Caroline building, the parapet wall, yellow salt scaffolding up there a couple of years ago. That's me up there.
Thank you, sir. We've got to get on with the meeting with the commission. Are there any other comments or discussions that the commission would like to undertake?
I have a couple of comments. I have been through this process since the tornado. My understanding was, Mr. Kimmel, the building was for sale before the tornado?
Yes, always been.
And I have watched, I'm really biting my tongue here. I do not understand for the life of me why we are telling a privately owned building owner what to do with his property.
We do that all the time.
We do, as part of, we do, I understand that. Are you saying that you want the city to come into every one of your properties and tell you what to do?
When they run down, you do.
And we have code enforcement to help keep this city cleaned up.
So you.
This building has been in process for more than 2 years. The only reason that the fence is there is because the county has ordered it to stay there. We have had 2 purchase contracts. Those people, each one of those people was given 60 days, Ben, am I right, 60 days to do due diligence? Or more than that. Why, I just question why we are allowing people to have a say in a privately owned building.
Because it's historic, that's why.
The history,
It's called the common good. We do it all the time for all sorts of things. The common good. Because not everything is about the individual. We sometimes do things because we live in a society where we help each other out and we share resources.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's, you know, we're getting repetitious to the type of comments, and we've got to deliberate some business here.
I have one more comment.
Yes.
The history of that building was destroyed in 1900. In 1900, when the front of the courthouse was cut off, and then that false front was added.
Which is historic.
The mayor has a table, please.
If anybody was concerned about this building, where have you been for the last 120 years? That building is cut up, chopped up inside. Nobody, not one person in this room has come forward during the last 2 years to make an offer on that building.
Because he priced it too
She
high.
just did.
You price it 3 times what it's worth, no bank's gonna finance it.
That is your
House, but
opinion.
it looks
You
raggedy
can
on the
talk
outside.
to the real estate agent. You can make arrangements with the real estate agent to see the building and to talk about the price. That is not this commission's job to set the price on a building. It is not your job. That is the building owner and his real estate agent. Deal with them.
You're a one-term mayor.
Come on, we need some order so we can proceed with business.
Can I make a comment? Consider wrap this up. My name is Paul Luzar. I live at 349 Countryside Drive North in Troy, and I'm the fiscal officer of the Troy-Miami County Public Library. And I would say to the comments where the man from Bruns pointed out that he's had all kinds of people go through the building and look at it, and they can't make it work. As a financial person, I can understand this. I've had rental properties myself. They can't find tenants that will pay a rent that will actually make the property work. I get it. But, and I'm not going to speak for the Board of Trustees of our library, but a use like that, a public use of that building can make sense. We're not going to, if the library were to buy that, they would be paying no rent to anyone. They would be the owner. And it's different if you can find an owner-occupant as opposed to finding renters. It changes the equation altogether. So I guess I would ask, of all those people that have gone through that building, are they all looking at it from the eyes of an investor and can I find tenants that can pay for this building? Or are they looking at it as I could move in here and use this building and I have a purpose for it? It's a different equation.
Thank you, sir.
Shane Carter, 2537 Defender Road, adamant property owner here in Troy. With all due respect, Mayor, the history didn't die in 1900. If you listen to what Terry Burke told you, we took every single ruler when that building was open to take our kids, and teach them about the history, about how slaves walked by way of the canal. They came here with land they owned in Mercer County, and they went in that building to realize that they actually had freedom. So if you really think in 1900 that a facelift, the history was lost, that's a very ignorant comment, and you need to retract that. Thank you.
Disgusting. So disgusting and ignorant. It breaks my heart.
One of the purchase contracts was a private,
No, you
wasn't
need
an
your name and
investor.
address.
Pardon?
Your name and address.
Randy Kimmel. One of the contracts, the purchase contracts was a owner-occupied building, half of it. And it didn't stand up to the same, we're going over and over the same thing. It's not just the investor. They tried to make it work, and it's just not economical feasible. We didn't plan on doing this. We didn't ask for the tornado. We bought the building. In August of 19, we got a certified occupancy permit. We got a food service license because we cleaned up the inside of the building. And then we was planning on doing the repairs, starting the repairs in the spring of 20. Well, the tornado came and put everything on hold. And it turns out after a year and 10 months, we're back to starting over again. It's not economical feasible to save that building without somebody stepping up to the plate with a big donor, not a small donor. We've been through grants, we've been through loans, and when the big donor said no, it can't be saved. Everybody that's been involved understands that. Unless everybody in here wants to step up and start donating money to save the building. But it's a lot of money.
30 seconds,
So,
Mr. Kimmel.
thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kimmel?
Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
My name's Diane Miley. My address is 223 South Oxford Street. And I have a question for everybody involved in this process that I've not heard anyone mention before, to me anyway. In the front is the Oddfellows building. Behind it is the courthouse. Has anyone discussed tearing down the Oddfellows building, saving the courthouse? I understand, I don't know this for a fact, but someone told me that the facade of the courthouse is still there. The columns, that's not true? Oh, darn. Well, anyway, my question still stands. What about the possibility of tearing down the Oddfellows building, which has history, I understand, and restoring the courthouse, which has the history for all of our citizens, including the slaves and former slaves who came through here. I just heard a little bit about that part of the story earlier today. But anyway, has anyone talked about that at all with any of you? About tearing down the Oddfellows building and restoring the courthouse?
It wouldn't come to us, it would come to the property owner or the real estate agent.
Well, I'm asking all of you, first of all, have any of you heard that question?
I have thrown that out, that if somebody wanted to purchase the
Sure.
building,
Randy,
they could
have you
restore
heard
the
that
front of
question?
it.
I have not. We've looked at a lot of different options, but they all come up to the same, it's just not economically feasible to do it.
Well, I guess my idea, I live in an old house that needs a lot of work.
30
So
seconds.
I understand that process, but if the courthouse could be saved, tear down the Oddfellows building, there could be a green space, people could have meals and meat and have coffee in front of the old courthouse. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Diana. Back to the commission. Is there action we want to take on this tonight?
Is everybody comfortable dealing with this without our chairman present? I mean, not acting chair, but.
I understand.
I mean, the only other question, I appreciate the insight that everybody's given today. I really do. I do appreciate a lot of history. And I don't want to keep bringing back the, I mean, the only legitimate one I heard to a point was the library conversation, but the library is just looking at it, and I understand you can't come up with a time frame necessarily, but there is a time constraint on this, I think, to a point, and I don't like saying that necessarily, but it's, the county starts making decisions that we're going to be forced to act upon, I understand, if we don't do anything today. And I'm not necessarily hearing that the library is going to be able to do such a thing. I struggle when we've been doing this for over a year and a half or so, and everybody has a lot of ideas in regards to how to bring money to the table, and we don't. I've seen groups talk about it, but it's all fallen through. So I struggle with continuing to push the ball forward without really a decisive plan.
I'd like to follow up with a comment on that. And I have expressed this privately to some of you in the audience. I find it very unfortunate that we have active people in our historical societies, but you need to do something financially so that when these situations come up, you are in a position to do something financially. This is my opinion, not as a commissioner, my personal opinion. I wish that you could come forward and buy this building and assure that something was done that you would like.
I'd like to speak on that as a representative from the history community. I'm the director of the Openfield Tavr Museum. We have limited resources. We are a private nonprofit, and we are currently working on trying to save Troy's oldest building in First Courthouse, built in 1808. That's where our priorities lie. I'm also sitting on the Troy Historical Society, and they have limited financial resources. I am also on the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance. We are a brand new organization. We haven't even filed nonprofit status. There are about 40 of us. We are just starting to get organized, and we have every intention of trying to support projects like this, but we've only been together for a few months. So I don't know how you expect us all of a sudden to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I have no expectation. I have a wish.
Yes.
And for the future, to think
And
about things like
we
this.
agree with you. We would love to pair with the community and with building owners throughout the downtown to help save our historic buildings and to rehabilitate them into properties that make a profit for the building owner and continue to contribute to our downtown. People come to downtown Troy because of the historic buildings. They may not even realize it. They come down here and they say, oh, it's so charming, it's walkable, it's full of businesses, restaurants. They don't realize that it's a historic fabric that attracts them to the downtown. That is what makes Troy so special. And that's what we are trying to save today.
Thank you.
Excuse me, just one more thing. I went through all this before with the Trinity
Give your name and
Episcopal.
address.
I'm sorry, Martin Stewart, 1486 Cheshire Road, Troy. I went through all this before with the Trinity Episcopal Church, where the experts came in and said the building was in terrible shape and it needed to be torn down and blah, 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 it couldn't be saved, and all that was false. It was all smoke and mirrors. In reality, there's nothing wrong with the building. It's in perfectly good condition. It's being restored. This building is bigger, more money involved, but in reality, there was an agenda, I don't know whose, and it's kind of difficult for us as a nonprofit to fight Mr. Kimmel and his resources, and at the same time, fight the city of Troy, who seems to be in cahoots with him. I'm sorry.
I'm Scott McMellar again, and I just want to put an offer out to Mr. Kimmel. I know I'm a businessman, and I know what you're up against. I've looked at that building.
Sir, address your comments to the...
I've looked at the building, and I know that parapet wall needs work, and I said it earlier, but I just want to reiterate that I will get up there and fix that. I'd like to see that picture hanging with these other buildings in here. And I know this has gone on for a long time because my wife was the first person, I think, that wanted to try to save the building. And I don't know why that is, but she kind of got me interested in it. And once again, I fixed the building at the Caroline that we all eat in. And I got up there, and that wall was in real bad shape, and it's repairable. And I want to go back to the fact that we're all worried about doing something and making a decision. Let's just pull back here. We've heard a lot of people talk today on a lot of emotions. I think it's in your best interest, if I was just sitting in your chair, to kind of just take a little more deep breath, step back, and take a hard look at what we're doing here. And like, I'm one person volunteering to get up there and fix that parapet. At no charge to you. Wow. I'll do it myself, okay? And maybe that person or that entity will come along and get Mr. Kimmel what he wants, and the community will get what they want.
I appreciate that dearly, but there is a lot more damage than just the front parapet.
I understand that.
And it comes down below the trusses, and it goes on the east and south side.
I will personally walk through that building with you. It's not mine.
Okay.
I don't have that authority to do that.
This is kind of a business
Yeah.
negotiation can take place afterward. Carol, we can't, you've already spoken once. Is there anything you can do that you're going to add to this?
There is something. Carol Kerber, 326 South Plum. I would just, again, the what if. I was thinking if Mr. Kimmel would donate the building, and I would be willing to provide some significant seed money if he donated it to the library toward raising funds. I think what Mr. McMiller just showed in his offer was the spirit of Troy that I've known all the years that I've lived here, which is quite a few. Thank you.
No, we're not here to discuss private business negotiations. It can take place. He has a realtor there, and Mr. Kimmel's available. That's not what's on the table before us. So we've got to focus on what's on our agenda at this point in time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I offer one more thought? Again, Christy Schell, because there's kind of this energy, can I kind of encourage you to think about, like we've done with other projects, like other offers on the building, that we have given time for the library because this is a new idea for their board and the feasibility. And
No, again, ma'am, that.
No, I'm asking.
The library and the people here want to make an offer, the realtor's
No,
over there.
please understand.
And the owner is there.
That's not my point.
That's not for our consideration.
I understand, that's not my point. My point is this, my point is that there's a possibility of giving some time for the library to vet their idea, whether it goes or not, then there's another round of demolition conversation that could come up later. But if we give the library some time to work out the ideas that are being generated at this point, I feel like that might be the best benefit to everyone. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that there's already a purchase contract that has been signed with a potential buyer.
Yes.
That purchase contract requires a due diligence period of 90, 120 days, something like that?
180, I believe.
180 days. So in reality, with that contract in place and only having been in place for a month or less, there'd be another at least 3 months before you could even entertain another purchase contract or any kind of offer given the status right now. Is that not correct?
That's correct, unless we want to ask the potential buyer to walk away.
So that would be up to that would be at their option.
It's their option.
And in the meantime, we have pending county and local orders to enforce at the same time. Is that, okay?
That's correct.
So, do I understand that there's buyer who wants some due diligence time, but we're being asked to approve the tear down of the building?
Part of the due diligence and one of the conditions is that the demolition occur. That's the offer that's there. That's one of the conditions while they go through their due diligence. It's kind of a chicken and an egg, which is why that's not part of the reuse plan, is what I'm getting from today's discussion.
Well, as I alluded to early on, we have what I consider a serious legal assertion on the part of Mr. Toom, and we have not received a response from our law director. I'm very concerned about that.
It's not, I mean, the law director, I don't know what you're expecting the law director to do. That's an allegation.
Is this a valid allegation? We have an attorney who
You-
has taken,
how is it
an
valid?
allegation. I would like to hear a response from the law director.
You say valid, where do you get that? How do you know it's valid?
We have someone who is speaking as
You
an
have
attorney.
an assertion.
An assertion, I will agree with that, by an attorney. Now, I've been warned in the past not to lawyer without a license, so I'm not going to try to do that. But we do have a law director, and I'd like to get his response before we simply dismiss this assertion.
So is that a recommendation that the process gets, the process in hand gets reviewed by the law director prior to?
I would like to see that. It would be my request.
That'd be a motion, put in the form of a motion?
Okay, so moved.
It would be moved that the action would be tabled until the assertions
I'm a little concerned
are-
about a tabling motion because that can't be debated. So, you know, if we'd like to discuss it before a tabling motion, that'd be fine.
Well, I can call for,
I don't know what other motion.
you can call for a motion and lack of motion. But what happens in lack of motion? Does it go on, is it automatically tabled? Or is it-
You know, the tabling motion is really the only way it goes to a next meeting and gives an opportunity for Mr. Kerber to weigh in on it if you want to ask him that question. That would be the appropriate way to do this.
Again, once I make a tabling motion, then we can no longer debate the issue.
Well, I don't know what we would be debating if we don't have
We
Mr.
can
Kerber's
debate
advice.
it after we move it from the table, once you've gotten.
Well, if I have a tabling motion again,
Tabling motion.
this cannot come back up
Does
until
not have
our next meeting.
a discussion, it just gets tabled until the next meeting, until someone makes a motion, like we did today,
To take it off.
to remove it from the table. I mean, we've done that on many items before. It's. Take it under consideration. So that would be your motion if you were
Well,
inclined to make it.
I will move that we table this until the next meeting, until we have an opportunity to have a response from our law director to the assertions made by Mr. Toom.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Able to grab that? Open for discussion?
That was Mrs. Ehrlich who seconded it? Yes,
Yes.
okay.
No discussion.
None?
Not on a table motion.
No, it's just a roll call vote.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote for tabling the
Okay.
action until the next meeting.
Mr. Westmeyer,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. McGarry,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Wolke,
Yes.
Mr. Titterington,
Yes.
Mrs. Ehrlich.
Yes.
The motion is adopted.
Thank you.
It was short and sweet,
Oh, I'm
again.
sorry, I
Sorry.
apologize.
Sonia Holy Cross, 44 South Cedar Street, Troy, Ohio. As I sat in the back of the room, I'm staring at Troy, Ohio, make it yours. It's ours. We're all proud of it. And regardless if this building stays up or falls down, we have a diligence, all of us, to cultivate our history. And so when we're talking about history, whether it's African American, Caucasian, Asian, these are Troy citizens that came here. And I think that that conversation needs to carry on regardless of if this building stays or not. Again, I think it was Ms. Ehrlich that said she had a wish. I have a wish as well, but I think it's going to take the whole community, not just the historical people. It's all of our diligence. Again, thank you for your time.
Okay, is there any other business?
Can I make one quick moment?
We do have a,
Really? I just thought of the GoFundMe, do a GoFundMe.
we do have one thing we'd like to point out to the commission. Agave and Rye is putting on a new roof on Monday.
We've got to complete the meeting, please. Thank you.
Just want to point to the commission, Agave and Rye will be putting on a new roof on Monday. It's material, they're replacing like with like, so it doesn't require a review from this board. But if you saw the action going on, we just want to let you know that we've talked to them and they don't have to come beforehand.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tim.
Is there any other business for the commission?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Motion? Second?
All in favor?
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
We tried.